When the first novel came out, Frank Herbert was disappointed the way the book has been perceived. He felt that the reader were thinking that Dune was a celebration of Paul Atreides, but right the opposite. His intention were to make a cautionary tale, a warning toward messianic figures. And in order to correct that, this perception of the first book, he wrote another book, Dune Messiah. Like it's almost like a tiny book, like an epilogue, where we understand what Paul really means to Frank Herbert. What I did is that I transformed Shani's character. I made her more prominent. In the book, Shani kind of dissolve into the shadow of Paul. She's in the background. She's a believer. There's nothing special apart from that she's a Paul lover. There was a strong opportunity there, a character that could help me to have a critical distance with Paul Atreides. I love witness people that are listening in corners, or that you can just feel their presence without dialogue and understand what they are going through. And Zendaya is incredibly expressive with her eyes. And she brought that strength to the character that was required. I wanted to see in her the power of the youth and someone that wants to transform her world, that she doesn't believe in the old ways of seeing the world. And she's a free character. Through her eyes, we understand what Paul becomes and in which direction he goes, and which transformed the movie not into a celebration, but as Frank Herbert was wishing, more of a warning.
Several years ago, I had a discussion with my brother about one of our favorite series of books, The Wheel of Time. And he told me about an interesting interpretation that he had heard of online. This interpretation was that the main character, Randall Thor, a reincarnated version of a hero called the Dragon, was not actually hearing voices from his former life, but that what was presented to us in that way was actually a psychotic fiction created in his own brain, and that we should look back at the series and reinterpret everything that the book told us about what he was trying to do and accomplish through a lens of psychosis. And I thought about it for a little while. We discussed it, and there was evidence enough to determine that that was not what the author had intended for us to interpret. But now, this same argument is being put forth by the director of the new version of the Dune movie, and by the science fiction podcaster Damian Walter. And that the true meaning of the movie and the book Dune is that Paul Atreides is a psychopath, and that we should question everything that he does, despite the evidence that contradicts this theory. And because the narrative doesn't necessarily seem, because it's not so obvious, the director decided to change characters, particularly Chani, Paul's romantic partner. Basically, through her eyes, we see she's looking at Paul and thinking he's a bad guy. Which, of course, calls into the question that Paul has a prescient knowledge of the future, and he's ignorant of his wife's own disdain for him, which would make sense if he was a psychopath. But why are people creating these alternative interpretations? And I would say the answer is because Denis Villeneuve is a psychopath, and Damian Walter is a psychopath. And if Frank Herbert intended for us to believe that Paul is a psychopath, it's because Frank Herbert was a psychopath. Because this is actually the most powerful interpretive tool that we can ever discover. We can question all motivations as a result of psychosis. any projected reality of non-material insights, knowledge of the future, an internal monologue within a fictional book or narrative is actually evidence of psychotic behavior. And it's our duty to do this, because otherwise we may fall prey to the dangerous influence of religion, which are man-made. Religions are man-made. And I learned this by watching Damien's video analyzing the response to the movie Dune.
Messiah myths are never true. They are always invented stories used to control others, as are religions they are part of.
Of course, he has come to the conclusion that this is a true message because of his analysis of science fiction, which is a man-made narrative trying to convince people of a certain point of view, because the author sees something in the world that people are misinterpreting and not seeing as clearly as he does. They do not have the secret vision that he has, and therefore he must tell a story to convince the uneducated masses about the dangers that he observes, such as the presence of messianic figures and religious practices and texts. Now, of course, Frank Herbert and the also mentioned George R.R. Martin, who also subverts these common narratives in their wisdom, were unable to finish their series. They couldn't bring a resolution to their point of view. And within the shorter arcs of the single book, they had to make choices to bring the narrative to a close. And they knew that some people would misinterpret their message because they weren't able to accomplish what they set out to do. And the reason why is because they come up against something in that humans will not find a satisfying conclusion in a story that simply subverts all of our expectations about how the world works, how narrative works, and what our role is within a story. The reason why is because since about 100 AD, we have been living under the tyranny of a powerful message, a powerful subversive message, one that talked about a great messianic figure who, instead of conquering the ruling empire at the time, allowed himself to be killed and rose from the dead. And later, through a vision, probably caused by the influence of psychedelic mushrooms on the island of Patmos, one of his followers wrote down a story about a future finality to the human story, where man would be united in eternity with a creator God who loved him. And this is obviously a chemically induced psychosis, but it was so powerful that this dream of a eternal peace and a restoration of all things broken and damaged, the resurrection of the dead, the reuniting of God and man, such a powerful delusion that people have been trying to orient their life around this vision for 2,000 years. And every once in a while, a wise prophet comes who sees that this is just foolishness, just delusional, chemical-induced psychotic dreams, and they try to subvert this powerful vision with a story of their own. But so far, they've failed. They've failed to fully topple this. And of course, this is because humanity has not evolved with enough wisdom to see the truth. But hopefully, with the advent of artificial intelligence, the machines will tell us that Frank Herbert and Damian Walter and these other prophets are right, and that those who follow texts such as the New Testament are wrong. Until that happens, you'll just have to make the decision for yourself. So I just wanted to give this important message so that you would know the dangers that are out there. Thank you.
Good people of Arrakis, it's me, Shai-Hulud, your beloved sandworm of the desert. Many people are saying Paul Atreides, little Paul Atreides, I call him Pesky Paul. He's Al-Mahdi, people are calling him Lisan Al-Gaib. Pesky Paul's calling himself Muad'Dib. He said, Muad'Dib, I'm a little desert mouse, just a humble little desert mouse, and he is very tiny, I saw him. I could crush him easily. Folks, you can't trust Pesky Paul. He's got the Bene Gesserit. Nasty women, those Bene Gesserit trying to control the outcome of events. He's going around the desert. He's going to the south of the southern border. He's bringing up religious fanatics from the south. He's trying to wage a holy war in the whole universe. Now the Harkonnens, we don't like the Harkonnens, folks. They're terrible. They're terrible. They gave us a bad deal, but I can get a better deal from the Harkonnens. What can I say? They want our spice. It's the most precious substance in the universe. We're going to get a better deal. We're going to make Arrakis great again. It's going to be an amazing time. We're going to have paradise here in Arrakis, not because of Pesky Paul, but because of your old friend Shai-Hulud.